Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 8, The Next Big Score. What's the one thing I remember the most from that night? Bacon. It had been a bit surprising to see that bacon and a few other kinds of meat were even offered at the food place. I hadn't seen a single non-pony there, and I couldn't imagine that they got Griffin or other visitors enough to regularly cater to a non-herbivorous diet. I was even more surprised when Starlight lit up upon seeing the bacon and quickly ordered some. Don't get me wrong, I was quite happy to order some for myself. It was good bacon too. Nice, thick strips, and the cook prepared it almost perfectly. Cooked all the way through and firming up, but not scorched and brittled like inexperienced cooks tend to make it. I enjoyed the opportunity to break from the herbivore's diet that I had been largely restricted to during my time in Appaloosa. Ponies weren't entirely strict vegetarians, often making use of eggs or milk in their cooking, but actually, meat tended to be a bit too extreme for their tastes. A few of the more bold and experimentative ponies might try it, perhaps emulating griffins or other such cultures, so I had used that excuse to snatch the rare nibble of meat. That ended after the second such treat in as many mouths, at which point I found I was getting a small reputation for it. That put a halt to my divergence from the standard pony diet, and after another month I had eradicated most traces of that reputation. To an infiltrator, few things are as dangerous as standing out as unusual, even if that reputation was entirely playful. So, on the other hoof, it was a great relief to be able to broaden my dietary horizons without suffering suspicion or condescension for it. On the other hoof, it was yet another reminder of how much things had changed. I had many questions ranging from cultural to historical to biological, but I set them aside for the moment and simply just enjoyed my meal. I'm not normally one to set aside questions and concerns for the pursuit of personal pleasure, but I think I can make an occasional exception for really good bacon. I did somewhat regret having to voice any concern at all when I noted how much more expensive the meat was than the vegetables they grew there. Our funds are quite still limited. Starlight laughed softly and soothed my fears.
Trust me, you know what the best trick is to keep from blowing all your caps? My mom taught me. You give yourself one splurge, one little extra you're gonna get with your next big payoff, so you're not always regretting saving everything else for more practical stuff.
She popped a slice of meat into her mouth and grinned.
And this time, I want bacon.
So we had our little celebration, such as it was. We had a huge tasty meal, finishing up with a whole box of snack cakes and a couple chilly bottles of sparkle cola. It cost us as much as several days' worth of meals, but I couldn't say it wasn't worth it. With full bellies and high spirits, we stumbled our way to Mustard's to get a room and sleep off the excess food. In hindsight, stuffing ourselves with fatty and sugary foods right before lying down to sleep, probably not the best and brightest of ideas. My stomach, having seen such little use in the preceding centuries, was not quite ready to handle the monumental task I had set upon it. Starlight fared no better than I, leading me to wonder whether the pony digestive system was properly capable of handling the amount of greasy meat we had stuffed into it. We both woke up early into the night to the bubbling and churning in our guts. We tossed and turned, keeping each other up as much as ourselves, while our stomachs slowly sorted things out. There was the occasional groan, hoofs pressed on our bellies, and at least one quick run to the toilet when our digestive tracts decided they had done all they could and quickly expelled the remains. Relieved of their burden, our guts quickly settled down and we drifted off, sleeping until noon. And you know what? We still agreed that it was totally still worth it. Well, not really at first. I woke to a feeling of crushing fatigue and a pounding head. I struggled to sit up more out of determination to not remain lying there all day than a personal desire to be upright. I immediately found a bottle of water floating in front of my face. When I pushed it weakly away, my stomach still felt a little funny, and Starlight insisted.
Drink it, please. You'll feel better.
While I could have argued with her, it didn't feel like a worthwhile expenditure of energy. I took a small drink at first, but under Starlight's continuing insistence, I downed the whole bottle. I felt bloated afterwards and laid down once again, but you know what? Just 10 or 20 minutes later, I was feeling much better. I didn't feel as worn out, and that headache was quickly receding into the background. Starlight smiled, looking quite proud of herself. Feeling better, we headed out. The first order of business was to get some breakfast. Despite the size of our celebratory meal, we were both hungry once again. And then it would be the time to work out what we would do next. Those plans derailed as soon as we made our way downstairs into the inn's common room, to find Dusty sitting there, hooves steepled and staring off into space. He was one of only 3 ponies into the room, while the other 2 were sharing a light meal and talking. He simply just sat there with an untouched glass of water set before him. We might have just passed right by, but something about it caught Starlight's interest. That or her ire. She changed course to pass by him and halted a short distance away.
So, what's up with you?
He didn't even blink. Thinking.
Yeah,
Starlight dryly replied.
we could smell the smoke. Thinking about what?
That finally brought Dusty's attention back into the room he was in. He glared flatly at her for a moment before looking back the way he had been. About a job offer. Seeing as he didn't seem very talkative, I nudged Starlight.
Come on, let's just get some food.
Whether it had been curiosity, belligerence, or the mention of a job, Starlight's attention had been thoroughly set upon Dusty, and she shrugged off my nudge.
Wait, so what kind of job?
He mulled over the question over for several seconds, as if deciding whether he should answer. Eventually, he did. Go to a research park, get some computer records for several companies, bring them here. He idly tapped his hooves together. Pays about 5,000 caps, maybe even more. Starlight's eyes went wide.
Holy shit!
Having less of a sense of the value of caps, I wasn't so startled by the number. I was, however, concerned by Starlight's reaction and the implication that had for Dusty's job. Her reaction didn't suggest that it was a large amount of caps so much as it spelled it out in giant flaming letters and beat me over the ears with it, all which led to me to one particular question.
So, what's the catch?
There was a ghost of a smile lingering only for a moment before fading into a grimace. It's Raider territory. A smile slowly spread across Starlight's face.
Oh! And you need ponies to go with you?
Yeah, Dusty grumbled. And I don't exactly have the greatest of selection. Starlight's smile grew into a full-blown grin.
Well, it seems to me that you've got a great selection right here. Question is, whether we want any part of your job.
His eyes narrowed. Don't get too full of yourself, kid. I ain't even decided if I'm doing the job, much less if I'm actually gonna ask you to come along.
So, were you thinking of asking us?
Starlight said, full of satisfaction. Thinking, Dusty echoed. Very long and very hard.
Well, it's a lot of caps.
Starlight said in a sing-song voice. I couldn't help expressing doubt.
I don't know. I don't like the idea of picking a fight with a bunch of raiders.
Again, that hint of a smile appeared. Neither do I, but she's right. It's a lot of caps, and with a bit of luck, there won't even be any fighting. I frowned.
I'm not staking my life on luck, and I don't think you are either.
He did smile at that, if faintly. He even exhaled in a way that suggested a chuckle.
Okay, enough,
Starlight said, nudging out one of the chairs and sitting.
You're gonna ask us to help you, so spill the details. Let's hear about this job.
I think it should be pretty obvious to you that I didn't like where this was going. Still, I figured it was worth hearing out the details. At least then I could give them more concrete reasons to decline. Dusty resisted only a few moments longer before speaking. That mare Steele pointed me to. She wants me to hit this old compound that was built into the hills south of here. Some sort of community set up by the Ministry of Technology for wartime research. Stable Tech, Equestrian Robotics, Iron Shot Firearms, Crystal Life, and some group called the Canterlot Medical Research Group. As much as I hated it, he suddenly had my interest. I still thought it was dangerous, possibly too dangerous to undertake, but I now had a much more compelling reason than caps. Money, it can be acquired through many means. Information, that was a more difficult commodity, and Dusty had unwittingly dangled it in front of me. One Crystal Life Technologies facility had been home to members of my hive for 2 centuries. What might I discover at other facilities? She wants me to go to each one of those companies' facilities, Dusty continued as I took a seat, and download all their computer records onto a data store. I bring that back to her, she pays caps. Trick is, it sounds like it was built with security in mind, so some raider band saw the high walls and towers and thought it'd make a great base. So, we have to get past them.
3 of us against a fortified raider band,
I said, frowning. Despite my interest in CLT, the information it might net me would do little good if I didn't survive to use it.
I really don't see this going so well.
Ideally, there wouldn't be any fighting, Dusty said, though I felt he lacked conviction. But I always plan for worst-case scenarios, and that means being ready for a fight.
Alright,
Starlight said as she leaned in forward, crossing her forelegs atop the table.
So, what is the plan?
Even if I bring you 2 along, we'd have to be ready for a fight, even if it is just to escape. A big fight, too. There's probably, a few dozen raiders in there? Whisper's right. 3 ponies aren't gonna cut it. We need more firepower. So, I've been thinking all night on it. I've only come up with 2 ideas, and I really don't like either of them.
Well, let's hear them then,
Starlight said. Dusty slowly nodded, then raised one hoof. Option 1 is to hire some mercenaries. There are a lot of ponies out there willing to kill for caps. Problem is, most of them are amateurs, if not outright psychotic, so they could be more dangerous to us than the raiders. Hell, some of them might even be raiders. I want to get some pony professional like Talon Company. They're good, but they charge it too. That's a problem. Not much point in even taking the job if we just give them all the caps to some pony else.
Still, salvage opportunities,
Starlight said, and she blinked and her expression darkened.
Well, unless the raiders all trashed that place too.
I wouldn't count on salvage, Dusty said. He sat there, frowning for a moment before slowly raising his other hoof. Which leads us to option 2. We hire Sickle. There was a moment of silence before Starlight expressed my own thoughts, albeit with a touch more profanity than I would have used.
You're fucking kidding, right?
Look, there aren't many ponies as good at killing raiders as her, Dusty said. And she works cheap. Hell, we can probably just let her keep the bounty on the raiders we find.
Seriously?
Starlight said, her voice rising.
What was all that amateur and psychotic stuff you were saying?
She's not amateur, Dusty said. Psychotic? I'll give that to you. I worked with her once. I'd really rather not do so again given the chance, but I think it might be the best option. She's got some sort of hate for raiders in specific. Not sure why. She wouldn't tell me.
Oh, so she's a professional psychotic,
Starlight said, throwing up her hooves.
Oh, well, I feel so much better. There's no way some raging sadist that loves carving up ponies would ever turn on us.
Hey, I'm not saying I like her or anything, Dusty said. I don't, but the only ponies she kills are raiders and ponies that cross her. Hell, you two broke into her home and she just threw you out.
After nearly throwing Whisper through a wall, and you saw those bandages that she needed after that?
Still, milder than I would have expected, Dusty said with a shrug. Hell, if it was me, I might have just shot you. Starlight stared at him for several seconds before replying, her words dripping with sarcasm.
Wow, thanks, Dusty.
Oh, calm down, he said. Walking into my home in the middle of the night to find a pair of armed ponies. Never thought I'd say Sickle showed restraint in anything, but there you go.
Doesn't change that you're wanting us to work with a psychotic murderer.
Well, I wouldn't call killing raiders murder, Starlight.
Well, what would you call gutting some pony and hanging them from the rafters?
Starlight shouted. Needless to say, the other ponies in the room are eyeing us. Dusty kept his voice much more leveled and controlled. Hell, I'll be the first to say that she enjoys killing a bit too much. No argument there, but really, so long as it's raiders she's doing it to, I can't really say I'm too troubled by it.
And, okay, what about that little colt she killed, huh?
He grimaced. I'm not terribly comfortable about the idea of killing a kid, but you saw that cutie mark same as I did. You have any idea what you have to do to get a mark like that? I shuddered, just a little. The same statement also made Starlight pause. Her mouth moved in twitches as if trying to come up with words but falling short. Finally, she looked at me for help.
And what do you think, Whisper?
I frowned, giving a show of mulling it over for a few seconds before speaking.
I think I'm willing to consider the idea.
Starlight's shoulders slumped, but I was already raising a hoof.
But on one condition. If I think for even a moment that she's gonna cause a problem, we're out. Gone. Period.
Dusty nodded. If I think she's going to cause a problem, I'll be walking right out with you. Starlight grumbled for a moment, sitting back in her chair and crossing her forelegs. After a moment, she practically spat out the word.
Fine.
Good, Dusty said. And I think I'll talk to Amber, see if she'll agree to 6,000. He paused, then added, same split as before, 50-50. Starlight nearly knocked over the chair as she rose.
Oh, fuck you, Dusty. Enough of this half-share crap. We each did just as much as you did on that last job, and you know it. Maybe even more. You can either pay us a full share each, like we deserve, or you can have fun playing with Psycho Mare on your own.
Dusty stewed over that. I had to admit, as much as I disliked seeing Starlight so angry, I felt just a little proud of how she had maneuvered him. I felt like a predator moving in for the kill as I spoke up.
It's a lot of caps, Dusty. You still get plenty even if you pay us a fair share. Certainly a lot more than you're likely to get without us.
He looked back and forth between us, remaining silent for just a few seconds. I could see the battle raging in his eyes, and I could see the moment the lines broke. Fine, he grunted. An even three-way split. Starlight let out a sharp laugh in celebration, while Dusty stood fishing out a pack of cigarettes. Think I'll need a smoke after that, he grumbled. For some reason, it feels like I just got fucked. That drew a snicker from Starlight.
Yeah, love you too, Dusty.
He turned to her, meeting her own smug grin with a scowl. Oh, shut it, kid. I know you two not lovers are joined at the damn hip, but if I had my way, I'd only be bringing one of you.
Yeah, you told us.
Starlight said, the smug grin growing a bit more. Yeah, I did. What I didn't tell you is that if I were to only bring one of you into a fight, it would be her. He leveled a hoof at me. Starlight's smugness vanished.
Seriously?
Starlight said, voice laced with incredulity at that. Even if it seemed critical of my own ability, I had to agree with her. She quickly looked my way as she realized how it had come across.
I mean, hell, Whisper's great at a lot of stuff, but shooting is kind of my thing and all.
You're cocky, Dusty said, leaning in over the table. Overconfidence gets ponies killed, and not just the pony who's full of themselves. I don't care how well you can shoot ranged targets or trees. I've never seen a ranged target shoot back or a tree moving to flank a position. I want a pony who is good in combat. You're arrogant and hot-headed. Again, his hoof pointed my way. I may not be entirely happy with her, but Whisper is cautious and at least seems to think through things instead of acting impulsively. I think she has better hopes of becoming a good soldier than you do. That was certainly the strangest piece of praise I'd ever received, and possibly the most troubling.
Seriously?
Starlight said once again.
But why?
Dusty shrugged, his response simple and calm after the preceding tirade. She keeps both eyes open while she shoots. Starlight stared at him.
What?
His expression darkened again. Yeah, you wouldn't pay attention to something like that, would you? You're so wrapped up in yourself. I've had enough.
Dusty.
I didn't shout out the name or even elevate my voice, but I said it with a sharp firmness that got his attention. His head snapped around to me as I rose from my chair, standing tall and meeting up with him with a firm stare. It wasn't really an angry stare, I just kept it leveled and dispassionate. I didn't want to rile him up even more, but I needed to make it clear how serious I was.
I may not have much experience with combat,
I said,
but I know that in any team endeavor, it's critical for every pony to work well together. Tearing into another pony on the team and encouraging strife is detrimental to the entire group, and if we end up in a fight, it can get us killed. That wasn't constructive criticism you were giving, you were just insulting her. If you want to educate us, that's fine. I'd even welcome the opportunity to learn, and if you're polite about it, I'm sure Starlight would too, but if you continue to be insulting and putting us all at risk, then we're done.
His jaw was tight by the time I was halfway through my statement. He glared back at me while I hoped I hadn't really misjudged him. The face-off lasted only a couple seconds. His glare wavered and his anger crumbled. Yeah, he said, his gaze dropping away from mine. You're right. You're right. He closed his eyes, his muzzle dipping to face the ground and ears folded back. He drew in a deep, calming breath and let it out again. I nodded, though he couldn't really see it.
Okay, then, let's go see this Amber.
Yeah, he said, quietly at first. He then straightened up again, his expression firm once more. He grabbed the yet untouched glass of water and downed it all in one long drink, and then thumped it back atop the table. Let's go talk to Amber. Behind him, Starlight was staring at us with wide eyes. Mostly, she was staring at Dusty's back. When she caught my glance, the expression changed to a wide grin, and she brought her foreheads together to mime clapping. I gave a tiny little smile and we both followed Dusty. Our destination was one of the big top-floor rooms, opposite the one that we had shared the first time in Rust. Dusty knocked sharply onto the door. A well-spoken but bored-sounding voice answered us.
Who is it?
Dusty. There was silence for a few moments, followed up by the sounds of hooves and the shuffling of furniture. After a few seconds, the sound stopped, and the door opened. The mare beyond had a golden-orange coat, perfectly cared for. The warmth of the color contrasted with the haughty look she leveled our way, which managed to achieve that perfect balance of contempt and disinterest. With the care and styling put into her smooth coat and short but stylish cut in mane and tail, she looked as if she would fit right in amongst the snobbiest Canterlot socialite. Beyond her, I could see two pairs of saddlebags, one set with large and stuffed with items, and the other set small and fashionable. Both looked pretty brand new, without a hint of dirt or wear. The outfit hanging from a hook beside the bed was practical and sturdy, but apart from the bit of dust, it just looked as new as the bags. Beside her stood the dresser that had, moments earlier, been keeping the door shut. She looked over the three of us before speaking in that same bored tone.
Well, I hope you did not bring these ponies in some sort of foolish attempt to rob me.
What? Dusty said, blinking. No, these are some of the ponies coming along for the job. Starlight stepped forward, offering a hoof and a smile.
Hi, I'm Starlight. Best shot you'll ever find around here. You must be Amber?
The mare looked down at the offered hoof, but did not return the gesture.
Lady Amber?
she said, and looked back to Dusty.
I don't particularly care what ponies you decide to subcontract so long as you meet the objectives I have detailed. Have you decided to accept the contract?
While Starlight's happy expression slowly withered at the cold rejection, Dusty nodded. For 6,000 caps. Lady Amber's head just tilted just a hair to the side.
I believe we had agreed to a final price of 5,000 caps.
That wasn't the final price, Dusty said. That was the starting price.
No, the starting price was 3,000. I've already been generous enough raising it to 5.
You've raised it to 5 because that's how much it costs to get me to even listen, Dusty replied. Then I found out you want me to break into a raider's fortress, hit 5 separate objectives, and extract ancient computer records from secure wartime research facilities. 6,000 is a bargain. Talons would charge you twice that, or more, which I figured that is why you're talking with us instead of them. She stared back inscrutable for several seconds. Then she gave a curt nod.
Very well. 6,000.
And 1,000 of that will be up front.
So you can run off with the caps without even doing the job? I think not.
So we know you can pay, rather than getting us to do your dirty work only to find there's no reward. She considered that for a moment.
I suppose that would be reasonable. However, my patron did not supply me with any caps to offer up front. Payment was also to be conducted after the data has been delivered.
Dusty's expression had tightened, his head drawing back a hair as he eyed her suspiciously. You mean you don't even have the caps to pay us? You better dig something up. You're not going to find any mercenaries willing to risk their neck for you unless they know you can pay. Part up front is the way this business goes. Amber's head tilted a tiny bit the other way. Several seconds later, she slipped a tiny smile.
It's still worth a try,
she said, and then the smile vanished.
I should be able to provide your fee for my travel budget. Remain here.
With that, she shut the door in our faces. Starlight turned to us with a smirk.
What a lovely and absolutely charming bitch.
Dusty answered with a near silent snort, as if to be amused but not willing to show it. As for myself, I allowed a slim little smile. Half a minute later, the door opened again. Amber held a sizable and spotless satchel, which she deposited before us.
1,000 caps plus 1 very rare data store. Do not think of running off and selling it. My patron has ways of tracking this device down, and as I'm quite sure you can see, has substantial resources to deal with ponies who become a problem.
Dusty snorted again. Wouldn't be pushing you for a bigger payout if we were planning on taking the upfront payment and splitting.
Unless you planned on using precisely that sort of argument,
she said, eyes narrowing slightly. She returned to her bored expression a moment later.
No matter. This is not particularly time-critical, but my patron would appreciate a speedy resolution to this endeavor. Would 1 week be sufficient?
Well, it should be, Dusty said with a nod. Unless something comes up.
Then I will expect you within a week. If that time passes and you have not notified me of any delays, I will assume you've broken your word.
It won't come to that, Dusty said. See you in a few days.
Good,
she said, and shut the door for good. The moment it was closed, Dusty huffed out a breath and rolled his eyes. Well, that's all settled, he said, then bent down to open the satchel. Inside was a large data store, probably twice the size of the one I carried. It was one of the rugged military types made to survive in rough conditions. It sat atop a large number of smaller sacks, and there were 10 in total. Dusty pulled out a couple to check their weight. They jingled and clinked as he did so, and returned them to the satchel. There must have been 5 or 6 pounds of bottle caps in there, and we'd be getting 5 times as many when we returned. This looks in order, he said, slinging the satchel over his back. Go, gear up. We should head out soon to find Sickle. Starlight smirked as we fell in beside Dusty, making our way out.
Such charming ponies you introduce us to, Dusty.
Even Dusty gave a snort of amusement at that. Huh. Yeah,